Hope everyone's enjoying themselves. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. If I sound under the weather today, I apologize. I am feeling kind of out of it today. But we steady grinding out here. I'm recovering from my second vaccination dose, so that's the reason for that. And I hope we start getting back to a new normal. I gotta, wait 2 weeks, and I don't have to start going back to the grocery store without a mask and whatnot. So hopefully this means that the light at the end of the tunnel is closer and closer than we expect. So so that explains that. We got some interesting things to talk about. We got some baseball talk to go around. We got to talk about the Nuggets, and we do have to talk about the fact that Nikola Jokic is the 2021 NBA MVP. He definitely was MVP of my fantasy league, that's for sure. Or at least my fantasy team, even though my team was hot garbage. And if Gianni was here, he definitely wouldn't be lighting my ass up about that. But just to dive into for one of our stories, our first story of the day, we got to talk about some things we learned throughout these playoffs already, going halfway through the second round. And I found it rather interesting about what I found out, because I found a post on Instagram. So let's just see. Yeah, so Dallas has not been underwhelming, at least when it comes to helping Luka. Think about it, because it's not a dynamic duo anymore, how people initially thought with getting Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis, I wouldn't say he's a shell of himself or whatnot, but Luka definitely is on his own right now, unless they move Porzingis, which I know we were talking about on the podcast last week about maybe he gets shipped to Boston or whatever. And yeah, it's really, you have Luka for I believe the next 4 or 5 years at least. And at that point, because he's getting his rookie scale max, we all know that. And if you guys aren't competing, think about it. Because I don't think, at least to me, I don't believe Luka Doncic is going to have the same loyalty as Dirk did to this franchise. And I believe, Luka and Dirk don't have similar skill sets. And one was a power forward and one's a small forward point guard. More of a point guard, you can say. But I believe, and you can say this about a lot of the young guys who are here right now. I don't know if this will... the way the NBA has been going, the direction, like, superstars have no problem leaving their teams for the most part. Just look at the Damian Lillard situation. Lillard has spoken out a bunch of times saying that he doesn't want to leave Portland. He would rather stay in Portland his entire career than to go somewhere else and try to win a championship. And Bradley Beal said he's dedicated to the Wizards, but again, just a lot of time, through time, and as the seasons go on, eventually perceptions change and mindsets change. So I don't know. I think we're kind of, I want to say, over and done with the superstar players sticking with one team for their entire career. But I would say guys like a Jason Tatum, a Luka Doncic, I won't even say if things don't go their way, but if the team fails to do what they need to do to try to put them in the best position to succeed, they'll leave. And again, I don't know that for sure. For all we know, these guys may love playing where they're at and they would want to stay and whatnot. But that's just something to look out for. So Dallas needs to do a better job at surrounding the pieces around Luka and get shooters. Definitely need more shooting. And it's funny how Tim Hardaway Jr., who's I want to say a throw-in, I don't believe, but he wasn't the main piece of that trade. Even though people are saying that he's the main piece now because he's more valuable to that team than Kristaps Porzingis is to this point. So that's just something to keep in mind. What they do with Kristaps Porzingis, who knows? But we got to just keep an eye out. The offseason is going to be really interesting. Something else that I found kind of intriguing was that people were saying that Derrick Rose still got it. And keep in mind, he did receive one MVP vote, I believe. He received one MVP vote throughout all the voting. And people were saying it like he lost it. Yeah, he lost his athleticism and he lost that that bounce that he once had, but he changed up his game. So quite honestly, when people said Derrick Rose still got it, I don't believe he really ever lost it. He just had to change it. He's not that ultra athletic dude who can jump out the gym and put your favorite player on a poster and whatnot. He still is one of the better players in the league. Obviously, he's not MVP form, but he's not the same player his MVP season was than he is now. And quite honestly, if he didn't adapt and change the way he played and just continue to try to be that player that he once was, it probably wouldn't have worked out for him. But here's the thing. It's an unwritten rule. You cannot hate on Derrick Rose, no matter what goes on. If you hate on Derrick Rose, bro, you need your basketball card taken away, that's for sure. But yeah, Derrick Rose, to me, he never lost it. He just had, and if he did lose it, he found it right away again. I know he had some rough seasons, leaving Chicago and going to New York the first time, but then people thought he was done going when he went to Cleveland and whatnot, and then they traded him to the Timberwolves, and then he started showing that, hey, I'm still here. So that goes to show, do I think Derrick Rose will be a Hall of Famer? If he gets some more hardware, then absolutely. I don't know what people were really thinking, that Derrick Rose will not be a Hall of Famer. Derrick Rose will be a Hall of Famer. That's me saying this right now, and I've said it before on this show. Derrick Rose will become a Hall of Famer at the end of his career. I feel he just needs a little bit of hardware behind him, whether it's a championship, a couple of Six Man of the Years, or something, just some sort of hardware, all NBA team, something. He will be in the Hall of Fame. He's not going to be the only player to not win MVP and not make it to the Hall of Fame. That's just absurd to me. Now we're switching to the other conference. Yes, Milwaukee, they were down. I believe they're down 2-1 against Brooklyn. I believe they're either tied. Their series is tied 1-1. Actually, no, it's 2-1 because I remember Milwaukee, they did win. And it's funny how Game 3 actually worked out, because it's the first time in a long time I saw an NBA game that both teams scored under 90 in a postseason game. Quite honestly, think back to the times of the 04 Pistons and whatnot in that series with the New Jersey Nets at the time with Jason Kidd. The games would be in the 60s and 70s because of the defense that was played. And yeah, just the fact that you can hold a team with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. I don't believe Harden was playing. If he was, it's even crazier. Down to under 90 points, let alone 100 and whatever else they were throwing up. That's insane. But I believe Chris Middleton had around 30 something, and then Giannis had it in the 30s. So they had a good portion of everybody's points, or that whole team's points. That's crazy to think about. Guys, just two players just pretty much carrying your offense. Like, I know KD and Kyrie did that. I believe Harden and KD did that during the Boston series as well. That's just nuts how three guys in your starting lineup is responsible for over 70, 80% of your team's total points. That's just nuts. But the fact that they have Drew Holiday, it makes it intriguing just to see how things will play out. But yeah, they got a big three. I don't know. People were trying to diss on Drew Holiday and be like, "Oh, Milwaukee stinks," because after that game two loss where they kind of just gave up. And I'm with the group that says Giannis needs to kind of change his perception on everything, because he said what he said in that Miami series, like, hey, if we lose or something along those lines or whatnot, where we need that sort of intensity, and we need that. I believe that Milwaukee team needs that kind of leadership. He's the best player on the team, and yeah, like, maybe there's a difference between being a leader and being the best player on the team, but the people who can do both, those are the elite, so. But I wonder how all these series are going to play out. I know, but it's and I do find it very, very enjoyable that teams that weren't in the playoffs or haven't been in the playoffs for a long time are kind of make up most of the field now, when you think about it. So Brooklyn, they were in the playoffs, but I mean, now of course they were going to at least make. You would expect them to make a conference finals appearance or something. But you got Utah, who's kind of like these guys who are kind of made that leap as one of the top upper echelon teams now. Phoenix, you got Phoenix and Atlanta more specifically, because yeah, people were like, that's, I guess, the popular vote for NBA Finals people would love to see, because the kind of basketball that's being played. Chris Paul is an absolute, like, he's called the point guard for a reason. So we got it. Dude is a first ballot Hall of Famer, all like the whole nine when it comes to that guy. And yeah, and I feel players like Chris Paul, those are the kinds of guys who, that's why the MVP's there for, like a Jokic and whatnot, who, if they weren't on that team would be absolute crap. That's why I feel they should add an Offensive Player of the Year to the NBA as an award, So, but speaking of some young guns and speaking of the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young and Jason Tatum. I know Tatum is part of the Celtics, I know, but something else that we learned in the playoffs, that both of these guys are superstars. Jason Tatum's a superstar, and Trae Young, the way this dude's been playing, he's definitely a top point guard in the league now. And granted, people weren't really putting that respect on his name in the beginning, even as early as last season. Think about it. This dude was averaging, I believe, 30 points, or around 29, 30 points, and around 10 assists a game. Now he's dialing it back in this Philadelphia series. But that, they really constructed that team very well, and I know I did say I'm kind of exposing myself, because I did say neither the Knicks or the Hawks had any business getting out of the first round. But they're kind of going to show that they're the underdogs. They gotta go to show they gotta be taken seriously and whatnot. So again, it's very interesting. And Ben Simmons is good. Like I've said this before, Ben Simmons is going to cost the Sixers a championship, man. And who knows? You remember along the lines when Ben Simmons was in the same conversations of all these young guys, the Luka Doncic of the world, the Trae Youngs, the Tatums, and whatnot, saying that he was on the same level as those guys. He's more of a step below. Great, he's a good defensive player. Yeah, dude's 6'10" point guard who's going to be guarding dudes who are 6'2", 6'3". Ben Simmons, I feel, is Philadelphia's best trade chip. And quite honestly, I could see him getting traded even as early as this offseason if things kind of go awry. And quite honestly, he would be much better off on a different team. Because and I've even said this before. Imagine this. Even if you put him on a team at like the Milwaukee Bucks style, you have him as a focal point, and you have a just team of shooters around him. Yeah, you can back off of Simmons and whatnot, but if Simmons is getting to the cup because nobody else can run over to help and try to double him, if he tries to drive in, he can just kick it out because he's a really good playmaker. Ben Simmons is a good player, but trying to put him on that upper echelon of young guys of the people I stated earlier, that's just not happening anymore. At least to this point, until he shows something else. Dude's got to find something with that Jimmy, man. You got to find something. You got to find lethal shooter would probably be more than happy to help him. But yeah, we got Suns and Nuggets tonight. Do I believe the series is over? I don't know. I mean, the way things have been going, I don't know. Do I think it's a sweep? I mean, that would be very telling on how serious this Phoenix Suns team is if they can close it out, because Devin Booker is stud. That Chris Paul has been everywhere for these guys, and that's crazy to think about. Chris Paul only through the first two games, men's had, I believe, over 20 assists, or damn near 30, I believe, and only had one turnover. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Like I said, as long as he stays healthy, Phoenix is they could easily make a finals run. But yeah. Who else is playing? I believe Bucks and Nets. I would say Milwaukee probably ties it today. I'll say that. I say Phoenix sweeps the Nuggets today. I feel those yeah, so I would say Phoenix wins their series tonight and Milwaukee ties the series. They just got to, hey man, it's always a tall task, but you got the former two-time MVP on your team in Milwaukee. So yeah, you guys still got a good chance no matter who you're facing, whether it's the three-headed monster out there in Brooklyn. And yeah, who do I think will win the Jazz and Clippers series? I know I got to talk about Paul George. Paul George, he was showing out last time. I got to give him credit. He was showing out. Him and Kawhi, just absolutely nuts. And I saw that people were saying let's be realistic. This is what, like, and this, I'm just quoting this. Let's be realistic. The Clippers are the best suited team to take out Brooklyn if that was a finals matchup. Now, what I think about that, if Paul George and the Clippers have been play like this, like, yeah, I could see it. Do I think that would happen? Don't know. But I would say they wouldn't make it a series, that's for sure. I feel like any team in the West would make it a series. Any team, I believe whoever comes out of that Clippers Jazz series may go to the finals. I feel we're looking at the finals, the representatives of the West coming out of that series. Even though I do love Phoenix, I would not be surprised that Phoenix would make it to the final. And speaking of Phoenix, Damian Lillard posted, and he seemed really disappointed about the Nuggets being down 3-0, and he's like, shake my damn head on Twitter. And people were giving him a whole, like, just lighting him up, because people were saying, oh, you always get bounced out in the first or second round, dude, you shouldn't be talking, this, that, and the other. And, I mean, shoot. I feel it just kind of is adding fuel to the fire that team, like, Dame could be on the way out in the offseason. But that was just a little tidbit we had to add in there. And, yeah, that was... It's offseason, like I said again, it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be real fun to take a look at it. But yeah, Phoenix is just nasty. Nuggets are just got hit with a stroke of bad luck with not having Jamal Murray. Do I think a series would have been a little bit different? At least up to this point, yeah. I mean, hey man, Jokic, he's an MVP now, but he only can do so much, you know. So, and I haven't really been keeping a close eye on that series, but hey, the conference finals are just little ways away, and even a Utah versus Phoenix or Clippers versus Phoenix matchup, it's absolutely nuts. And you got to think about it. The teams that are still in it, like I said, when it came to new teams starting to take that next leap, the Suns have never won a championship. The Clippers have never won a championship. The Nets haven't won a championship. And you have Utah that's been to the finals but hasn't won a championship. I don't believe any of these teams have won a championship in the longest of times. I don't think there's any recent champions, I should say. So, I do believe a championship drought is ending, whether it's Brooklyn or anybody else, you know, any one of those teams I just mentioned. But yeah, keep a close eye on the NBA playoffs, and just keep an eye on that, because there's gonna be a whole lot of moving, and for all we know, there's gonna be those teams back on the come up, you know, especially when I believe the season's going back to how it usually is, 82 games and whatnot. But it's been a weird time because of how the season went, 10 less games, and people are getting hurt left and right. So hopefully they can enjoy a good length off season and actually get back into it. I do find it crazy how these guys are professional athletes that get paid millions of dollars to play a game, and they can't take care of themselves. Like, take James Harden, for example. Like, guys who, like, we got to admit James Harden's a little out of shape. No matter what year of the past 4 or 5 years, even his time as a Rocket and whatnot, some of these guys are just out of shape. I remember Paul George came into the season, I believe, out of shape his first season in Oklahoma City. You got things like that. Like, that's just absolutely nuts. Yeah, these guys get paid millions of dollars, and it's the offseason. It's like, oh, I don't have to start getting ready to do this, that, and the other. I do find it crazy though. So you gotta just take care of yourselves, you know. But yeah, now that NBA talk is out of the way, we gotta talk about some baseball. You already know how things are going over here. So, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., like I said last week, the young guys are carrying the league right now. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was the first player to hit 20 home runs this season. And like I said, it's like just talking about the young guys again. You know, Tatis is going nuts. And here's the whole point of me saying this, because like I said Fernando Tatis Jr. is most likely going to be the face of baseball in the next couple of years. Again, not as the best player, because Mike Trout's still going to be Mike Trout. But let me talk about this. Players who have a realistic shot of being the new number one, or just being next in line. Because again, Mike Trout is still going to be Mike Trout. It's kind of like saying, oh, Giannis is the best player in the league, or Kevin Durant's the best player in the league, and LeBron James is still there. But granted, in the NBA, it's still really up for debate. Baseball is the only sport I really think of right now that there's a clear-cut number one, and everybody else is second tier, no matter how good you are. Like Mike Trout, people like Mike Trout, you can debate DeGrom, but realistically, Mike Trout's the best player in baseball. He's better than DeGrom. He's better than Mookie Betts. He's better than Aaron Judge. He's better than Tatis. All those guys. He's a model of consistency, and it seems to me he wants to be more of the Kawhi Leonard type, just quiet, because that's all he wants to do is just play the games, not these larger than life characters that of baseball of old, and even guys right now like Tatis. So somebody I would really think of is Mookie Betts. But the thing with Mookie Betts is that he's more, I won't even say 1A, 1B, because keep in mind he won the MVP back in 2018. And I believe it wasn't even a down year for Mike Trout, but I think it was just riddled with injuries for him, so that's why. And his team was in a better position to win, and for all we know, he did win the World Series with the Red Sox that year. Yeah, Mookie Betts is maybe the closest thing to Mike Trout when it comes to getting on base. Maybe the home run numbers, I think that's the only thing Mike Trout has on him. But yeah, Mookie is definitely a better, you can say like all these guys that, when you compare them to Mike Trout, they have things that they have up on Mike Trout. But Mike Trout, the fact that it's not far off from what these guys are playing like Mookie's definitely a better defender. But that's not saying that Mike Trout is garbage compared to him. Just like Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is a great defender, and he has a great arm. And we get all that. We got that. But the fact that Mike Trout can put it all together the way he can makes it absolutely nuts. Like, think about it when Ken Griffey Jr. was in the league. Dude had the glove, he had the arm, he had the swing, he can hit, he can get on base, he can steal, he can do everything. Those are what we call 5-tool players. And all these guys that you compare to Mike Trout is maybe the perfect version of a 5-tool player. And that's why I say that if he wins a championship, he would be considered the greatest player of all time, even while he's still playing. That's at least my opinion. Who I think is the greatest player of all time right now, it's very hard to say. To me, I believe it would be someone like a Barry Bonds, but it's kind of like how it is in football. It's kind of hard to not pick a certain position for the greatest player of all time, because you can pick a receiver, like, say, I'm just naming a name, say like a Randy Moss, if you wanted to use that as an example, but yeah, let's use Randy Moss as an example. Certain players, or the receiver is only as good as how good the quarterback is. Yeah, Randy Moss is an all-world wide receiver and whatnot, but I believe he didn't always have the best QB, so he can, he still made it work. Dude is still absolute stud. But then a QB is in a better position to get the most out of his players, because he's the playmaker. Like, think about Steve Nash. He elevated guys when he was playing back in the day and on those Phoenix Suns teams. Like those guys who can elevate players. But when talking about Mike Trout, his team hasn't been the greatest, and besides, even if Mike Trout's been absolutely on a tear, his team has still been absolute garbage. They try, like I said, they need to fix their pitching, and there's plenty of things that they need to do. Fernando Tatis is in a better situation, that if he stays on the track that he's on, he can have a case for being one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. Like I said, because I feel when you think about guys who are the greatest of all time, in baseball anyway, and even in any sport, most of those guys have hardware. LeBron, Michael Jordan, you got not Ken Griffey Jr., even though Ken Griffey Jr. is considered one of the greatest, and I'll even put him up there. I would say either him or Barry Bonds, or guys like that. But obviously they have guys like Barry Bonds, they have certain things about him, steroids and all that. But yeah, Wayne Gretzky in hockey, you got Tom Brady, like those guys have chips. I'm not super familiar with hockey, so I'm not sure if Wayne Gretzky has won a championship. I believe he has, but I'm gonna have to check that. But yeah, guys, those GOATs of their respective sports, those guys have hardware to them. Yeah, those guys have hardware to them. That's why I say, when you think about it in baseball, oh, okay, so Wayne Gretzky is a 4-time champion. But you think about it in baseball, Ken Griffey Jr. is looked at as one of the greatest of all time. He wouldn't be, in my opinion, he would be clear-cut greatest of all time, no matter the generation, whatever, if he never got hurt, or he didn't get hurt as much. And even with the injuries he had near the end of his career, dude is still looked at as one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, you look at the Barry Bonds of the world, the Ken Griffey Jr.'s, the Mark McGwire's, and the Babe Ruths. I believe Babe Ruth out of those guys I named have won a championship or World Series ring, I believe. And yeah, you look at these guys that are considered one amongst the greats. Those guys don't have a whole lot of heart, but they have the Silver Sluggers, they have the MVPs to their name, they have the gold, they have the accolades, yes. But the thing that always kind of sets them apart, because whether we like it or not, when it comes to comparing players of not even different generations, but just great players all together, people always do the ring counting, man. When it comes to Jordan and LeBron, they do the postseason success. Oh, Jordan 6 for 6 in the finals. LeBron has 4 rings. This, that, and the third. You know, so he has 4 rings in 9 tries or something. Like his finals record is terrible. And that's the thing. We do ring counting. If it was in a simple world, ring counting would decide who's the GOAT. And if that's the case, neither one of those guys are a whole lot. The GOAT discussion would be a whole lot different in many sports, because Bill Russell has more championships than anybody. And then you look at some of these other guys. I feel winning a World Series championship is maybe the hardest championship to get out of all the sports. I feel, think about it. The 2011 Mavericks were a perfect example of one guy pretty much carrying a whole team. And if LeBron would have won in 2018, that would have been some GOAT level stuff. But Dirk, yeah, he had a great supporting cast for that team, yes. But think about it, he didn't really have a clear-cut number 2. The 04 Pistons didn't even have an all-star, but yet they have some of the great players of that era, and Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamiltons of the world and whatnot, you know. Like those guys, like those Rough Riders, you know. Not really too familiar with hockey, but then you see Tom Brady, like, again, I'm not trying to diminish any of these other accomplishments or, oh, man, it's easier to get a ring here than it is there. But I believe a World Series ring, it's very hard. It's maybe the hardest championship to win in sports, at least out of the 4 majors. And people will say, like, oh, look at the Yankees. They got 27 of them mofos, you know? So, but let me say this. Let me tell people this. The Yankees, yeah, they 3-peated and they got their championships in the 90s, and they got that ring. They've only won 1 championship in the last 20 years. And yeah, again, they're 27-time champions. I get that. But most of those championships were around. They got most of those championships when the playoff format was so much different. That's what people argue with Bill Russell. The playoffs are so much different. If you were the top of your division, I believe it was you played 1 playoff game or 1 playoff series, and then you were in the World Series. So it was the road was a whole lot shorter. So that's what I say about that. But yeah, long story short, when it comes to comparing GOATs, especially in baseball, I look at the postseason success more than anything, because it's very easy. Because if we just set that to the side and just talk about just the players' accomplishments just as being an all-time great, like a Ken Griffey Jr. or Barry Bonds, again, for example, or even pitchers. We can't even forget the pitchers, because Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez are definitely maybe 1A, 1B. And I can go on and on about those guys. I'll even delve into it a little bit. But I look at the postseason success for these guys, but the problem is with pitchers, starters and whatnot. Like, again, I can name a GOAT for every position, and that makes things so much easier. That's why I don't like clear cut naming players like, oh man, this guy's the greatest of all time. Like I said, it's just my opinion. Like, if Mike Trout were to win a championship, he's the greatest of all time. Think about it. Don't you think it's a whole lot easier to name a GOAT at each position in your respective sport than to try to say this guy's the greatest out of everybody? Like in baseball, all right, I'll do baseball and basketball. Let's do basketball first. And again, it's always opinionated. If you want to, and you got to be realistic about it too, because yeah, you can say your favorite players of all time are the greatest. Like, who do you believe is the greatest of all time? I believe Magic Johnson's number one. But if Steph Curry, I feel Steph Curry don't really need to prove anything to anybody anymore. But I feel if he gets a couple more championships to his name, or one, because again, like we cannot debate greatest of all time, and we can't exclude championship rings and whatnot. We can't exclude postseason success, because that's where legends are made. So I would say Magic, but Steph is on that trail, because think about it, we really do not fathom or understand that Steph Curry's gonna break the 3-point record next year. He's gonna break that thing next year, and he's probably gonna be the first player to hit 4,000 threes. Like, Steph is already in the tops of greatest of all time. He's the greatest shooter of all time. Shooting guard, I would say Michael Jordan. I'll say Michael Jordan, and then close seconds are Kobe and AI, if you want to consider him a shooting guard or whatever. Just the name, but Bryant 1, Kobe 2, and even D-Wade. There's plenty of players you can put in, because everybody got their own opinion. We're trying to be not even factual about it, but we're trying to just go with what everybody else has said, because people look at MJ as a GOAT, and just like at small forward, everybody looks at kids and people who grew up watching LeBron and watching kind of post to, like, whenever LeBron entered the league and whatnot, people look at LeBron as the GOAT already, like the Nick Wrights of the world and whatnot. So it would be Magic or Steph Curry, but Magic, Michael Jordan, it would be LeBron James. Power forward, we would say Tim Duncan, Dirk, or KG. It's kind of always like a three-man race right there. I would say the big fundamental, because he had plenty of he was the focal point of many championship Spurs teams and whatnot, and they went on a 20-year run of being dominant and being in the playoffs. So we got to, like, again, he beats Dirk and KG with rings, and yeah, he has MVPs to his name and whatnot. All three of those, like, again, you can use either one of those three, because all three of those guys were nasty. But we would have to use that. And then center, again, it's up to an opinion. Like, I would say Kareem, because Kareem is probably the best center of all time. He's an all-time leader in points. Dude is consistent for the longevity and whatnot. But again, you can't discredit Shaq. You can't discredit Bill Russell, and all those guys. And again, there's plenty of players you can put in that. So, and then when it comes to, like, I'll even throw in six man, like something like that. You got to talk about. You can't just name a set player. You'd have to kind of pick people who were notorious for six man. You'll probably say Jamal Crawford or something. But again, people wouldn't even look at guys like that. And I feel those guys should get more respect, like the Lou Wills of the world and Jamal Crawfords. Because I feel Jamal Crawford should deserve to be in the Hall of Fame for being maybe the best six man of all time. But hey, that's neither here or there right now. But yeah, on to baseball, talking on to kind of the GOATs of baseball, I would say, because I'm going by position, and I again, like I said, I'm going to reiterate it until this is done. Is that you can put up a slew of players, like, again. But left field, you got to go Barry Bonds, and because I'm starting left field, I'm going to finish that catcher, and then I'm going to do starting pitcher and closer. So left field, Barry Bonds. I know people would give Barry Bonds a whole lot of crap in the fact that he had a terrible relationship with the media, and he did take roids, and again. But here's the thing I'm going to talk about again, and this is an unpopular opinion, I feel, amongst a lot of baseball fans, that baseball needed the steroid era. And again, I'm not condoning players and dudes to use performance-enhancing drugs. I'm not advocating for that, and I'm not pushing for players to do that, because here's the thing: if you made it to the highest level of your profession, why do you need to change? You busted your ass. Why do you feel you need help? Or why do you feel you need to do something like that? Because that discredits everything you ever done, or discredits your entire career. It's gonna put a blatant tarnish, and it's gonna ruin you. But yeah, like I said, because that's what got baseball fans and people to come back and start watching the game again, is the fact that these guys were having the home run races with Sammy Sosa and McGwire and whatnot. You gotta understand that. baseball was in a terrible place before all this was going on, before the steroid era actually happened. And I feel it's unfair to those guys. Again, like, here's the one thing I can do in their defense. Baseball is maybe the hardest thing to do in all sports. That's just me. And the fact that these guys were putting up unworldly numbers, again, with the help of roids, I get it. But people, you can't, for Barry Bonds' sake, you couldn't tell what year and when exactly did Mans really start taking steroids. Like, yeah, people are like, oh, look at him in his younger days as a early ball player, and look at him near the end of his career. He was huge. Yeah, but then people really didn't start calling him out on it until the end of his career, when people actually started like diving into it. And it's like I said, Barry Bonds, I don't think he'll ever make it to the Hall of Fame. I feel like that's just a disservice to one of the greatest players of all time, because he's freaking good. All these guys, again, it's always a sensitive topic for older baseball fans and whatnot. Like, oh, these guys played the game the wrong way. I feel everybody should do their thing the right way and go about life the right way, you know? But yeah, Barry Bonds, I believe he's the oldest MVP ever, 7-time MVP. He made it to the World Series once. He's the all-time leader in home runs, granted with an asterisk on it, and people would say Hank Aaron. And Hank Aaron's one of the greatest hitters of all time. But yeah, you got Barry Bonds. I believe he was a 7-time MVP. 7-time MVP, multiple-time Gold Glove. Dudes can steal bases, hit bombs, all that, the whole nine. So yeah, there's no way I couldn't put Barry Bonds in that. And the fact that this dude, he won MVPs from 1990 to 2004. He won, I think I was right with the 7. Yeah, he did win 7. He was the oldest MVP ever, I believe, in his age 40 season, if I have that right. But yeah, and then he had yearly averages of 41 home runs, 108 RBIs, while batting damn near 300. That's, again, otherworldly. That's just crazy. And he holds the all-time career record in all-time walks. There ain't no way that Barry Bonds wouldn't have been on an all-time team. 22 years of dominance, you know. But yeah, it's still, long story short, Barry Bonds left field. Center field, Ken Griffey Jr. And yes, I would be like, oh, if Mike Trout wins a ring, this, that, and the other. But as of right now, again, Mike Trout, best player in baseball right now. But right now, it's Ken Griffey Jr. And the fact of the matter is, I don't like comparing players until the career is over, and until like their career is over and done with. Like, that's why I don't like having GOAT talks with people about past generations. Certain players are still playing. Like, at the end of Steph's career, I feel people will start viewing him as the greatest of all time, depending on how his career turns out. But in Ken Griffey Jr., with Griffey was the poster child for baseball back in the 90s. This dude, absolutely, everybody that I'm gonna name, absolute stud. And maybe down the line I'll do a favorite players of all time for baseball anyway. But yeah, you had Griffey, who was, I believe he was a 4 or 5. He only won one MVP in that 97 season, where he just went God mode, and he was the top 5 in MVP from I believe 4 or 5 times. That's crazy to think about. Just like Kobe only won his sole MVP in 2008. There's plenty of seasons you can say for Ken Griffey Jr. he should have won MVP. And dude, in a steroid era where he didn't. That wasn't him. There was guys like, all the spotlight was on the home run race with Sosa and Bonds and whatnot, and those guys were hitting up close like 60, 50, 60, 70 home runs in Mark McGwire and Bonds' case. Griffey, in that span, dude was clobbering home runs. 56 in 97, 56 in 98, and 48 in 99, and then he hit 40 his first season in Cincinnati at the turn of the century. And it's just crazy how his career turned out, because like after 2000, because he did, I forgot what injury it was, but all I know is Griffey is what people would look at as a 5-tool player. Hit for average, hit for power, has a great glove, throws extremely well. Those Seattle teams were carried on his back, and Griffey is probably the greatest player to not win a championship And again, you can say guys like Barry Bonds and whatnot, but I feel Griffey was just absolute. Like, the fact that Ken Griffey Jr. didn't win a championship or even make a World Series is absolutely startling to me because of how good that guy was. He was everywhere that late. Ken Griffey Jr. again, baseball. I don't know where baseball would have been without a Ken Griffey Jr. But yeah, Ken Griffey in center field. Right field. This is a tough one. Very, very, very interesting because I'm just going by primary position because you can name any outfielders, but I gotta actually do a little bit of research because you can name guys like a Reggie Jackson, Mr. October, or Roberto Clemente, or Babe Ruth. I guess if people are listing Babe Ruth as a right fielder, then I guess I got no choice but to put Babe Ruth there. And the fact that this dude, like, I know when I was stating earlier, like, guys have to take care of themselves when it comes to you getting paid millions of dollars and whatnot. This man, Babe Ruth, was eating hot dogs and drinking beer before every game. That, yeah, obviously it was a different time. Modern medicine isn't what it is now. But Babe Ruth is just, like, all the nicknames can kind of speak for themselves. He's hit over 700 home runs. I believe it was him, Barry, because he was the all-time leader of home runs at one point. But yeah, absolute complete hitter. He wasn't the greatest fielder, but the fact that this dude started off as a two-way player kind of, and then just, again, it's crazy to think about, but Babe Ruth is definitely one of the greatest players of all time, no matter the generation, and definitely the greatest player for his time. Definitely the greatest player of all time for his time. So yeah, now you got the outfield set. So third base. Again, I feel guys like Alex Rodriguez and whatnot. Like, I know Alex played shortstop for a decent amount of his career, and you got guys like Mike Schmidt and those guys from plenty of different eras. And I would say Chipper Jones, because dude, definitely the greatest switch hitter of all time in my opinion. But the fact that this dude could pretty much do it all, like, he wasn't the greatest fielder. If you wanted defense out of your third baseman, it would definitely be Mike Schmidt, I should say. And no disrespect to Mike Schmidt, but I would say Chipper, just because this dude was just as complete as you can get. So I'd say Chipper for third. And the fact that he had so much longevity to him, he was the one-time MVP back in '99. And it's always crazy to see how certain players, like, baseball, I feel, is the only sport, I would say, that guys remain elite no matter how old they get. But again, I feel the way the world's, like, progressing with modern medicine and whatnot, you're going to see a lot more players, like, play very well the older they get. Like, I feel we'll see a lot more LeBron James cases and whatnot, and guys want to be out of the league by the time they're 33, 34. But yeah, I'd say Chipper. Shortstop. I know people would say Derek Jeter, and I want to say Derek Jeter, but I want to be sure I'm not missing anyone, because you can have Ozzie Smith, but Ozzie Smith wasn't the hitter that Jeter was. Honus Wagner. Again, you can look at A-Rod if you want to consider him, or Cal Ripken Jr. Again, these guys. Ozzie Smith for St. Louis, again, he was one of the better he's the greatest defensive shortstop of all time. And I feel Andrelton Simmons, who's in the league right now, he has a great shot of being a Hall of Famer as long as he kind of remains consistent. Because the fact that Ozzie, I believe, I don't think he hit more than 10 home runs in his career, which is crazy. But yeah, I would say Jeter, because, I mean, shoot, it's like not putting Kobe Bryant in the all-time in a top 10 players of all time kind of deal, because it's kind of like you're disrespecting Kobe in basketball the way you would if I didn't put Derek Jeter on the list. I know I put Michael Jordan over Kobe in the all-time speaking of all-time players, but you gotta remember. But Jeter has the championships to him. I believe he has MVPs to him. He just became a Hall of Famer this past year. So, second baseman. I'll tell you, second baseman. I feel there's plenty of players you can pick, but I would have to probably go with Jackie Robinson. And the reason I picked Jackie is because he was a trailblazer for the plenty of the players and generations after him. And he paved the way for people of color to make a splash in baseball and make a splash. Just like the fact that Jackie was just such a pioneer with all the stuff he had to go through. Definitely, like, and there's a reason his number's forever retired by every major league team. You know what I mean? So there's not many players, if any player at all, who had, like, again, he was a rookie at 20 years old, and he played, I believe, 10 years. He played 10 years, and he won a Rookie of the Year. He was MVP. Again, there's plenty of players you could pick, but the fact that Jackie did so much for the game, man. Again, we can talk about Robbie Alomar or Joe Morgan, whatnot. Those guys, yes, but again, I don't think they hold a candle to Jackie. Not saying that these guys weren't great, because again, all these guys are. First baseman. I don't know, because the thing with first baseman, you can go with plenty of players. Ooh, and it's like there's kind of isn't really any wrong choice, I guess. I'd probably go with, and it might be recency bias, but I might go with Albert Pujols, because we cannot discredit what Albert did in his prime. We can't discredit that. I know he's in his 40s now, and I don't know how many years he has left, but I mean, shoot, he's enjoying himself in LA. But we cannot discredit the fact that this dude they called him the machine for a reason. 3-time MVP. He'd be runner-up multiple times. He's a Silver Slugger, Gold Glove winner. I know, again, recently, hasn't really gotten any of those accolades. He was an all-star. The last time he received any sort of accolade was back in 2015. But again, his prime, not to say that Mark McGwire shouldn't be here, or Frank Thomas or whatnot, or Jim Thome. But I would say Albert, because dude was just the machine. He was an absolute, like, how were you pitching to this guy in his prime? Dude can hit for average, and dude can just clobber home runs left and right. There was no way you were pitching to this guy. And I feel he sticks around until he hits 700 home runs, and then he calls it a career. I believe he can at least hit the 700 mark. He's at 672, so he has to hit 28 more. I believe. Actually, no. 28 more. 28 more home runs for him. I feel he has it in him if he plays those next couple of years. But yeah. Catcher. I would say for catcher, I would say either Ivan Rodriguez. The thing with Pudge is that dude was more of a defensive catcher the older he got. But the way Pudge was just... Because the thing about a catcher is a very, very important position. I feel it's more important. Like, people say, like, the hardest position to play is shortstop. The reason people would say shortstop is because you get the most run time. But I would say definitely catcher, because that takes a toll on your knees, man. That takes a toll on your knees, and you have to call the game. Most of the time, Alex Rodriguez was such a terrific play caller, but it's not... Again, we can throw Jimmy Fox or Carlton Fisk or guys like that, some of those great players and whatnot, you know. And the pitching side would probably be a whole lot easier to talk about. But Pudge was just so, like, you cannot bring up catchers and not say that he wasn't the greatest or one of the greatest, because dude was doing it all. He's a World Series champion with the Marlins. Dude, it's funny. It's bringing me back a memory. Like, dude got called up on his wedding day. So dude had to get married on I believe, a minor league field. But Pudge Rodriguez, I would say he's definitely, like, at least to me, the greatest catcher of all time. All right, so offensive players aside, we got starting pitcher, and then we got a closer, and then we're done. So again, there's plenty of players you can pick, and it's really a two-man race, at least for me, for the greatest starting pitcher of all time. It's either Pedro Martinez or it's either Randy Johnson. And the reason I can make great arguments for both of those guys, because Pedro was doing things that nobody else was doing in a steroid era where the ball was flying all over the place, and this dude was just absolutely unhittable. But again, it's not discrediting Cy Young, who a damn award is named after, so you have to put his name up there. Roger Clemens, the Rocket, and then Sandy Koufax and these guys. But again, I feel to me it's a two-man race, because Randy Johnson was just pure dominance. Like if I picked the greatest right-handed pitcher of all time, it's Pedro. Greatest lefty is Randy Johnson. And I think that's what set Randy Johnson apart from a lot of these guys. So I would have to put him again 1A and 1B, but Randy may have a little bit more on him, more on Pedro anyway, because this dude was a 5-time Cy Young Award winner, and then the fact that this dude was just punching out guys left and right. He has World Series rings to him with the 01 Diamondbacks, but yeah, this guy just absolute filth, and he played until he was into his mid to late 40s. Pedro was just, both of these guys again, pure dominance. But yeah, I would say it's kind of hard to pick one over the other, because again, and I know people will probably say biased because of Pedro being a Red Sox fan and all, but you can't discredit the fact that this dude was putting up numbers, So I'll put, it's Randy Johnson and Pedro if we're doing righty lefty. But a clear-cut greatest closer of all time it's Mariano Rivera. There's no question about it. And all-time leader in saves. And the fact that this dude really only had one pitch, but the fact that it was so effective. And Mariano, again, I'm not really one to be oh man, this dude's a Yankee, I can't. No, as I gotten older, I've learned to kind of just enjoy players no matter what team they're on. Mookie's still one of my favorite players, and he's on the rival Dodgers, because we had World Series battle with them and whatnot. The Yankees, my team's been feuding with them for as long as I can remember. But yeah, I still like Stanton. Even he was my favorite player when he was in Miami, and he's my favorite player right now. I don't think I really have one. I guess you can still say Mookie, but in terms of just appreciating the greatness that I see. That's why when I was younger, even a few years, even as early as going through high school and whatnot, I'll be oh, Steph Curry's this, or oh, nah, man, these guys. But then I really learned to appreciate how good these guys really are, no matter what jersey they were wearing or rather what team they were on. And I know I did forget designated hitter, and to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I'd say David Ortiz. I know people would say, oh, Jim Thome and all these other guys, he was greater for long, but I'm talking about DH, designated hitter, not a guy who can play a position. He was there. David Ortiz made the DH more of a position than it was. And the fact that dude is just, I feel David Ortiz was one of the greatest players to never win an MVP. At least to me, and he's my favorite player of all time. But dude is one of the clutchest players of all time. And the fact that he was able to play for so long, and the dude had the greatest 40-year-old season. And I remember, yeah, you can say that there was players that were, there was times that people were saying, oh, this dude took roids, or this dude was taking PEDs and this, that, but he didn't let that define him. And I believe it was a test that wasn't supposed to get out. I don't really read up on that too much, but again, that didn't define him as a player. While some guys like McGuire and Barry Bonds, like people didn't let that die at all. But yeah, like I look at David, and David is just like, you can't not look at this guy as an all-time great. But yeah, shoot. NBA games tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed this very, very long podcast. But hope everyone stays safe out there. It's a beautiful day over here on the east side, so I hope you guys, if it's nice where you guys are at, I hope you guys do get out and enjoy the fresh air. I'm gonna go and hop back in my bed and go and take a nap. But I feel like I had to take care of some business today. So I hope you guys stay safe out there and enjoy the rest of your day. I love you guys. Stay safe.